So good evening to everyone. So I'm very happy to be back again in Singapore for tonight's talk. And for this series of talks, we'll be talking about the book on Humanistic Buddhism, holding true to the original intents of the Buddha. And for this session tonight, I'll be touching on chapter 4. And chapter 4 is basically divided into 3 parts. And I'll be talking on the first part. And then the next 2 months, you have part 2 and part 3. Okay, so in the book, Venerable Master started off by introducing how Buddhism began in China. So, do you still remember who was the emperor? And he's actually Emperor Ming of the Eastern Han Dynasty. And that year was year 64. Okay, so he had this dream of this golden man. And then his minister told him that in the West, that he saw in his dream. So he told him that that was the Buddha. Okay, so Emperor Ming went and dispatched his envoy to go to the West. And in the text is the Western region, and it's what we know as the Central Asia, in today's Central Asia. Okay, in Chinese it's called Xiyu, right? But that region is actually Central Asia. All right, and so that was how Buddhism began from there. Okay, and then Venerable Master went on to talk about daily routine in the first section of the chapter. So he started off with food, and then he goes on to talk about clothing, housing, and traveling, right? And I think it began with these 4 things, because these are the daily necessities that we need to come across in our daily life. And so I guess that was why Venerable Master started off with these 4 areas. And during the Buddha's time, the Buddha also talked about these 4 things. Okay, but except for traveling, instead of traveling, the Buddha talked about medicine. And in the Vinaya, he also talked about how you should regard, how monastics should regard these 4 things. Okay, so the first one is on the robe. So with regard to the robe, the monastic should use it simply to ward off cold, heat, flies, mosquitoes, and simply for the purpose of covering the parts of the body that cause shame. Okay, so the use of the robe is very simple. It's not used to beautify your body, but to use to keep away from any kind of discomfort, and also just as an attire to cover the body. Okay, and then with regard to alms food, the Buddha said that you should use it not playfully. That means you should regard the food with respect. Okay, because during the Buddha's time, the monks had to go out for alms begging, and whatever food they are given, they should take in with gratitude, and not with a kind of disrespect. Okay, and the Buddha say no intoxication. All right, so no alcohol, no drugs, etc., and not for putting on weight. Okay, so monks are not allowed to overeat. They're only allowed to eat in order to support the body, just enough to support the body. Not for beautification. Okay, that means you don't take pills that will slim you down. You don't take anything, that will boost certain parts of your body. Yes, things like that. But simply for the sake of keeping the body free from hunger. Okay, And so simply for survival and continuance of this body, for ending its afflictions, for the support of the chaste life. Right. And so the monastics should maintain themselves, be blameless, and live in comfort. Okay, so that's what the Buddha said about alms food. And then with regard to lodging, it's quite similar to what the Buddha said with regard to clothing. So to ward off cold, heat, flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles. So it's the same, to keep the body away from discomfort. And for protection from the weather, and also for the enjoyment of seclusion. Okay, so the place that they choose for their lodging is actually a secluded place, okay, away from the bustling and hustling of a city. And they have enough seclusion so that they can do their own meditation at the monastery. And with regard to medicine, it's for curing the sick, okay, curing the illness. You use them to ward off any pains of illness that have arisen, and for the maximum freedom from disease. Okay, so that was the four requisites that the Buddha said with regard to food, clothing, lodging, and medicine. Right. Okay, right. And in this chapter, the Venerable Master actually talked about traveling. Right, so I guess I will start off with traveling. Okay, so as we saw in during the Buddha's time, the Buddha traveled around India to beg for alms, to beg for food, and also to give teachings to different people. Right, so traveling is a very important aspect of the Buddha's life. Okay, because of traveling, the teachings of the Buddha got spread to different places and to different people. And then it's also because of traveling that Buddhism spread to other parts of the world. Okay, so as we saw in the video, in the year 64, Buddhism was spread into China. Okay, so after Emperor Ming of Eastern Han Dynasty, after he had this dream, he dispatched his envoy by the name of Cai Ying to the western region to search for the Dharma. And Cai Ying went to this place called Darou-zhi. All right, Darou-zhi is no longer existing in today's world. But if you look into the text, it was a place that exists in the Central Asia. And so probably somewhere in Xinjiang. Right, but this place is no longer existing. And you can only find reference in ancient texts. And he went there and then he found two monks. Two monks came back to China with him. One was Kasyapa Matanga, the other one was Dharma Ratna. And they were said to have traveled on a white horse, bringing also the scriptures with them. And they ended up in White Horse Temple. Okay, so that was the very first temple in China and a very important symbol of Chinese Buddhism. That was where Chinese Buddhism began. Okay. And then Chinese Buddhism went through many dynasties until the Cultural Revolution. And also there was this inner war and conflict in China. And many of the Chinese monks, they started to go to other places, right? So for example, Taiwan. And Venerable Master was one of the monks who traveled to other places and came to Taiwan. And then he started establishing Humanistic Buddhism in Taiwan. And then later on, Venerable Master started the BLIA, and he started to set up branches in different parts of the world, including Singapore and Malaysia. Okay, and that's why we have a very beautiful branch temple here, and also in many parts of Malaysia. And I can see that, you know, from the number of people attending this session tonight, I can see that Buddhism is prospering and flourishing in Singapore and Malaysia. Okay, so let's start off with what the Buddha was doing during the Buddha's time. So he went to travel on foot and to seek for alms and to give teachings. And there was actually one particular sutra in the Chinese canon. It's called Chang'o Han Jing. And in Chang'o Han Jing, there is this sutra called Yu Xing Jing. Okay, and this sutra talks about where the Buddha was traveling and what are the teachings that he gave during his travels just before he passed into parinirvana. Okay, so if you're interested, you can also look up this particular sutra. And it has records of the places that he went to and also the teachings that he gave. So, what are the places that the Buddha went during the Buddha's time? If you look at this map of India on the bottom left corner, the Buddha was mainly traveling in northeastern part of India. Okay, so this is a bigger version of this northeastern part of India. He was born in Lumbini, and we know Lumbini is in now Nepal, right? And his hometown is Kapilavastu. Okay, he belonged to the Sakya clan, and the Sakya clan is in Kapilavastu. Okay, and then after he left his home, he went and attained enlightenment in Bodh Gaya, which is here, right? And then he gave his first teaching in Sarnath, in Deer Park, to the first 5 disciples in this place, right? And then he started to travel around northeastern part of India. For example, Rajagaha, this is one Serchen, right? This is where he gave a lot of his teachings, and also Vaisali. And then Sankasya is where he came down from the heavens. And then finally, at the end of his life, he traveled to Kushinagara and he passed away. Okay, so these are some of the places that he went to, and they were mostly in northeastern India. Okay. Okay, and when Buddhism was spread into China, this practice of traveling by foot, we call in Chinese 行脚托钵. Okay, 行脚 means to go on foot, to travel on foot, and 托钵 means to seek for alms, right? Okay, but in Chinese Buddhism, it is not part of the culture in China to seek for alms. Okay, so there isn't really 托钵. There is mostly 行脚. But in Chan Buddhism, 行脚 is also done in a quite different way. So instead of begging for alms, the monks travel from monastery to monastery, okay, to seek for teachings, to seek for the right teacher, etc. Okay, so and there is a period of time where the monks would travel between Mazhu Daoyi's monastery in Jiangxi and Shitoji Xiqian's monastery in Hunan. Okay, so there's one monastery in Jiangxi and the other one is in Hunan. And so that's why they say 跑江湖. Okay, that means the Jianghu roamers, okay, they go to Jiangxi and Hunan, in between these two monasteries. And so many people, when they watch the TV drama, they say 跑江湖 means travel around the world. Okay, but actually, it actually came from this Chan Buddhism, and it means to travel between these two monasteries. Okay, and I was very curious whether there were any monks in China who actually did what the Buddha did during the Buddha's time, like they travel and seek for alms. Right. So we know that in Chinese Buddhism, they don't have this tradition of 托钵, okay, but they actually go to the dining hall. So the process of seeking for alms. In China, it was transformed into going to the dining hall instead. Okay, it came out. Right. Yeah, I got this from the internet. This is a group of nuns who have this practice of alms procession for 2 weeks in China. And you can see they are carrying their own backpacks, and they have their own sleeping mat, and then they carry a staff. Okay, and they walk for 2 weeks, and they follow the tradition of the Buddha. Okay. And this particular temple is in Liaoning province in northeastern China. And they are not allowed to take money. They are only allowed to beg for alms or beg for food. And they are not allowed to touch the money. So that's following the precepts that the Buddha has laid down. And the temple doesn't have a donation box. Okay. And they only eat once at noon, and they only sleep for 4 hours a day. They meditate. They do a lot of meditation, and they meditate for what it takes to burn 5 incense. So I guess that's probably at least 5 hours. And they would go for the pilgrimage, which they call Angya. Angya is actually a Japanese term, which means 行脚. Okay. They go for this procession every year after the Mid-Autumn Festival. And they have done it for the past 17 years. Okay, they started in year 2000, and they have been doing this for the past 16 to 17 years. Okay, so these are some of the photos that was shown on the article. This is devotees showing respect to the nuns. And then when they come across any dead animals, they would bury it. Right, like this one, I believe it has been run over by a car. Okay, and so they will pick them up, and then they would bury it. And then they will dedicate the merits to the dead animals. And also they perform some rituals along the way. And they also do their meditation. And they only collect food. So they don't have any money. They don't carry any money. Okay, so this is the food that they collected. And then having their meal at noon. Okay, so it's like sort of trying to lead the life of the Buddha during the Buddha's time. Okay, reading the sutras. And then they have some write their journals, or they do their drawings. And then they sleep on the street. They don't go to the temple to rest. And they find along the way, as they are doing their pilgrimage, they find a place to sleep on the street. Okay, yeah. So this is quite rare in China, because most of the temples, they don't follow the tradition of the Buddha begging for alms anymore. So this is a pretty rare example, and it's quite surprising to find this that they're actually Chinese nuns doing such a practice. Okay, so we know that the practice of tuopo has been transformed. Instead of seeking for alms, the monastics, they would go to the dining hall to get their food. Okay, and so going to the dining hall, walking to the dining hall, they have to line up, right? And you have to line up in a formation such that you have to be aware and mindful of the people that is walking around you. Okay, so that is that kind of walking, that mindfulness practice in walking is to have a good grasp of timing and space in itself. So that itself is a mindfulness practice. Okay, and as you are walking to the dining hall, you should also have the attitude that you are seeking for ounce. Okay, so it's not like you're going to the restaurant and having a meal. You have to carry the attitude that you are going to receive offering from whoever is making the offering. Okay, so Chinese Buddhism, they have what we call Paipan, okay, and Jingxing, right? So forming, lining up information and doing the walking meditation. Okay, so in Chinese Buddhism, they say walk like the wind, sit like the bell, stand like the pine, and recline like a bow. Okay, so in Chinese that's 行如风,坐如钟,立如松,卧如弓. Okay, so that's the 4 demeanors that a monastic should have, and how they should conduct themselves. Okay. Okay, next I'm going to talk about food. So this practice of tuopo has been localized, and it is called 过堂 in Chinese Buddhism. 过堂 means to pass through the hall, right? So what does it mean by passing through the hall? It means that we should be detached to whatever we are given. Okay, so if you have a very delicious green curry, you should be detached, right? Or if you have something that's horrible and terrible to eat, you should also remain detached. Okay, so the practice is to be detached to whatever you are given. And so we have these 5 contemplations, or in Chinese we say 五观想. And the 5 contemplations involve being grateful for what you're given, and to reflect on your own cultivation. Okay, so in Chinese we say 应供. Okay, 应供 means to be worthy of what you're offered. Okay, so another term of the arahat is 应供. Okay, that means to be worthy of the offering, you need to be an arahat. Okay, so the practice of 过堂 is also to reflect on your own cultivation. That means you haven't been worthy of the offering, and so you should reflect on your own cultivation, and also to be this to be unbiased towards what you are given, and you should think that you are taking in this food for the sake of maintaining this body for the spiritual practice. Okay, so in Chinese Buddhism, the dining hall we also call it 五观堂. That means a hall where we do the 5 contemplations. All right, and we know during the Buddha's time that we don't eat after lunch. No, we don't eat after noon, right? The midday meal is taken before noon. Okay, that's because of a particular precept. And but in Chinese Buddhism, that's quite difficult. Okay, because in India, the monks do a lot of meditation, and they can survive without an extra meal. They can get by with having a meal by the midday. But in Chinese Buddhism, the monks don't go for alms begging, and they have to grow their own food, right? They have to sustain their own meals, like they have to do farming. And so there's a lot of manual work involved. Okay, and so there was this additional meal that's added to the day, and that meal was regarded to be a medicine instead of a proper meal. Okay, so you notice we don't actually wear our robes when we go to the dining hall for the medicinal meal. Okay, we only wear the robes when we go for the morning and the midday meal. and we don't, because that the extra meal that's added, what we call dinner, is actually a kind of medicine. Okay, it's not supposed to be a proper meal. Okay, and this medicinal meal in Chinese we call yao shi. Okay, shi is stone, right? And so when I was in the Buddhist college, I used to wonder, why is it that this meal is called yao shi? Why is it that we eat a stone for dinner? Is a stone edible in the first place? And why do we eat a stone? So I was wondering, so I went to check out. And according to the dictionary, Foguan Dictionary, for the Chan Buddhist practitioners, they would place a heated stone on the stomach to ward off the cold and to ward off hunger. Okay? And so this stone was a symbol of that medicinal meal. Okay, and so the medicinal meal was, in Chinese, is called yao shi. And of course, in some places, in some case, you can also call it yao shi, 食物的食. Okay, but yao shi actually came from this story, whereby the monks actually put a heated piece of stone to get rid of the hunger and the cold. I've never tried that, but I think you can try that and see for yourself. Okay, so what's the Buddhist diet? Or in Chinese we call zai cai. Right? Zai actually means 清净, or it means purity. Right? And during the Buddha's time, the Buddha said that there should be no killing. He emphasized this as one of the precepts. Okay? And that the food should be prepared based on non-violence, or ahimsa. Okay? The Buddha didn't say that you have to be a vegetarian, right? And the Buddha himself also took meat. But he did say that if you need to take meat, it should be triply clean meat, or what we call in Chinese 三净肉. Okay? And so what does it mean by 三净肉? What does it mean by triply clean meat? It means that this meat that is prepared for you, it should not have been seen. This animal should not be seen to have been killed, and it should not have been hurt. You should not have been hurt to have it killed for you, and it should not be suspected to have been killed for you. Okay, so that was the condition that the Buddha set for the monastics if they need to take meat. Okay, and then the Buddha also said that there should be no alcohol, because that would disturb your meditation, and also it might lead you to breaking the other precepts if you do not have a clear mind. Okay, so no alcohol. And then the Buddha also said that no 5 pungent spices. Okay, so no onions, no garlic, etc. No 五辛 in Chinese. Yeah, 五辛. Why is it that the Buddha said that there should be no 5 spices? Okay, according to 楞严经, it says that if these 5 spices is cooked, it might lead to greed and attachment. If these 5 spices is eaten raw, it might lead to anger and hatred. And if you take in these 5 spices, the gods will stay away from you. Like the beings in the heavenly realms will stay away from you. And the hungry ghosts will lick your lips. They like the taste of these 5 spices, so they will come close to you. Okay, and so, if you have this habit of eating these 5 spices, then you would have the company of these hungry ghosts, and then gradually your merits from spiritual practice would decrease over the days. Okay, so we actually need to be very careful. When you go to a vegetarian restaurant, in the West, there are many vegetarian restaurants. I think in Singapore, there's also a lot of vegetarian restaurants. But vegetarian restaurants doesn't mean it's a Buddhist diet, okay? Because a Buddhist diet is, you should not have the 5 spices inside, okay? Right. Yeah, and actually I recommend that you can watch this documentary. It's called Chef Table. It's on Netflix. And you can watch this particular episode, the first episode of season 3. It features a Korean nun called Jongkwan, and how she prepares a Buddhist meal. Okay, it's very interesting. And so I highly recommend that you watch this if you have time. Okay, so what was it that the Buddha ate during the Buddha's time? Somebody did a study, and he looked into the scriptures, and he tried to see what was stated in the scriptures. And he came up with this list. So you have milk rice porridge, fresh ghee, wild rice, rice with grains, barley meal, honey balls, curry, roast apple, mango, fruits, barley, lettuce, milk, vegetables, and bread. Okay? So, although the Buddha didn't say that you have to be a vegetarian, but you can see from this list that he is quite close to a vegetarian, right? Most of these things, all of these things are actually vegetarian, isn't it? And what was it that the Buddha ate most, if you look at this list? Rice, right? Rice and fruits. Yeah. Okay. And in Chinese Buddhism, the eating of porridge and congee was also emphasized. Okay? And in Mo He Shen Qi Lü, that's Mahasangika Vinaya, it says that the porridge or the congee has 10 benefits. Okay, that's why for the morning meal, we always sing the offering verse, right? 周有实力，饶益行人，果报无边，究竟安乐. Okay, that means the porridge has 10 benefits. It benefits the practitioner. It has limitless merits. And it brings about joy and comfort. Okay, so what are these 10 benefits? Okay, the first one, 姿色, means you will have a good complexion. 增力, that means it gives you energy. 益寿 means it enhance your longevity. 安乐 brings about joy and comfort. 辩说, it means it will moisturize your throat, and it's good for giving a teaching or discourse. And it's also good for, keeping the balance in your body and removing air and cold from your body. And then number 7, it's good for digestion. Number 8 is that you will have a clear and sweet voice. Number 9, it removes hunger. And number 10, it removes thirst. Okay, so these are the 10 benefits that was written in the Vinaya, and it encourages practitioners to eat porridge or congee. Okay, and if you go to Foguanshan, they always serve you with a bowl of porridge, right? And it's Vero Master's idea, 以粥代茶. Okay, so instead of the tea, they serve porridge. We call 平安粥. And I think that was what was served to visitors. If you go to Dongchan Temple, to the Di Shui Fang at the Dongchan Temple, they would serve visitors with a bowl of porridge. Okay, so it's to benefit the practitioner, and then also a gesture of welcoming the visitor. Okay, and we know in Chinese Buddhism, we have what we call 腊八粥, right? And I believe all of you know what is lapazhou. So literally, lapazhou means it's zhou, it's porridge with 8 different kinds of ingredients. Okay, and why is it called lapa? What's the meaning of lapa? Lapa means the 8th of the la month, right? And what does it mean by la? La yue. Okay. And okay, right. La actually means offering, making an offering to your ancestors. Okay, it's the month where they make an offering. Okay, so on the 8th of the La Yue, we take in lapazhou, right? And it has 8 ingredients to symbolize lapa. And it is taken to commemorate the Buddha's enlightenment. Okay, so because the Buddha, the day when we celebrate the Buddha's enlightenment in Chinese Buddhism, we celebrate it in the 12th lunar month, the 8th of the 12th lunar month, right? On that day we call Fa Bao Jie, right? And we eat lapazhou, right? Okay. But if you look into the scriptures, the 12th lunar month is actually winter time in China, right? It's somewhere around January. We usually eat lapazhou in January. So that's winter time. Of course, in Singapore, there's no seasons. But in Taiwan and China, that's winter time, okay? But if you look into the scriptures, for example, 长欧汉经 and 过去现在因果经, the Buddha was enlightened on the 8th of the 2nd month, okay? And in some scriptures, they say 4月8日, that means 8th of the 4th month. And then 大唐西域记做3月8日 or 3月15日. So it's somewhere between the 2nd to the 4th month, right? If you look into the scriptures. And the 2nd month to the 4th month is springtime, isn't it? But why do we eat in winter time? Why do we eat in winter time, since the Buddha was enlightened in springtime when the flowers were blossoming and the weather is pleasant? Why do we eat? Why do we eat? You don't know? Okay. According to the text in the Song Dynasty, it's because during the Song Dynasty, they have a calendar called Zhou Li. That means the Zhou calendar. And the Zhou calendar starts from the 11th lunar month. Okay? And during the Song Dynasty, they follow the scriptures. The Buddha was enlightened in 2月初八. Okay, so they follow this particular date, the 8th of the 2nd month. And so they call the 2nd month as La Yue. Okay, so the 2nd month was named as La Yue. So La Yue became the 2nd month, and it turns out to be the 12th lunar month. Okay, because they were following the Zhou calendar. And Zhou calendar starts on 11th lunar month. And so the 2nd month becomes the 12th lunar month. Okay, and so that's why today when we eat lapazhou, we eat on the 12th lunar month. Okay, but you can still remember the Buddha was actually enlightened in spring. And we can still eat the porridge in winter, right? Okay, so today when we celebrate the Buddha's enlightenment, we eat lapazhou, right? We eat congee. But what was it that the Buddha actually ate during the Buddha's time? What was it that was given to him just before he was enlightened? What was it that you normally read about? What did he receive? Goat's milk. Somebody said milk rice, right? Okay, so there is many different versions in the sutra, and one of the most common version is that he was given a bowl of milk by Sujata, by this girl, shepherdess called Sujata, right? And so I went to look up the scripture and to see whether it's true. So I look up this particular sutra. It's called 佛本行集经. And you can find this sutra in 佛光赞, 佛光本愿藏, okay, which is just published recently. And you can also find it in the, if you want to read the sutra in English, it's in the Abhiniskramana Sutra. It has been translated as Romantic Legend of Sakya Buddha. And it's available on Google Books. Okay, you can download the whole PDF on Google Books. All right? And in this particular sutra, it says that after the Buddha had fasted for 6 years, he decided that he didn't want to fast anymore, and he is not leading him anywhere. And then he started to recall the time when he was young, and his father took him out, and he saw the plowing match, and he seated under a tree, and he did some meditation. And he recalled the time when he was young and when he experienced meditation. And so he wanted to do that again. Okay, so he told his friend, a Brahman called Deva, I told his friend that he wants to take in food again. And he asked this Deva if he can prepare for him wheat and oil, milk and honey. Okay? And Deva says that he doesn't have these things, but he can look for another Brahman for him. So he went to look up for another Brahman. This Brahman is called Senayana, and he has 2 daughters, one called Nanda, the other one called Bala. And he told his daughters to prepare wheat and honey, milk and oil. Okay, and so the 2 daughters, hearing that, were very happy, and they prepared these things for him. And they went to the Buddha, and they offered him. The Buddha asked for butter and oil. So he took the butter and oil, and the Buddha rubbed it on his body. And as soon as he rubbed it on his body, the butter and oil gets absorbed into his body, like water gets absorbed into a sponge very quickly. And then you can imagine, because he has been fasting for a long time, so he rubbed his body to get the food in the quickest manner. And after rubbing it and after absorbing, he regained his young and handsome look again. We know that if you look at the sculpture of a fasting Buddha, he looks very thin and very old, right? But after he regained his strength, he looks young and handsome. Okay? And after that, after receiving that offering, he was very thankful to the 2 daughters, and he asked the 2 daughters, what is it that you would like to have? I can help you to fulfill your wishes. And the 2 daughters told him that they have heard of a Sakya prince by the name of Siddhartha, and they want to marry him. And the Buddha, hearing that, he says, well, I am Siddhartha, but I have given up my family, and I have made the vow to seek for enlightenment. Okay? And then the 2 daughters says, well, then after your enlightenment, we would like to be your followers. And the Buddha agreed. And so the 2 daughters continued to bring him offering. And then after a few days, the Buddha was able to regain strength, such that he was able to go and seek alms for himself. And he asked the 2 daughters to go home, to go back. And the Buddha started to go out and seek for alms. And then the second person that he met was the shepherd boy. Okay? In many sutras, it was a shepherd girl, but in this sutra, it was a shepherd boy. And the shepherd boy gave him a bowl of goat's milk. And he drank that down, and he regained even more energy. And after regaining the energy, then a thought came to him, that he says that he thinks that he should be getting food for the purpose of enlightenment. Okay, so this time, he wants to seek for alms, and he wants to take in the food for the purpose of enlightenment. Okay, so he went out and he went to find a village lord. And this village lord had 2 daughters, and the Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, told him that now I want to take in food only for the purpose of attaining enlightenment. And so the 2 daughters went to prepare, and they got the milk of 15 cows and the best rice that they can find. And they mixed the milk with the rice. And so it was a bowl of milk rice. Okay, and then when the Buddha went to seek for alms to that particular household, the 2 daughters brought out that milk rice, and it was Sujata who brought it out to the Buddha. And when the Buddha saw that bowl of milk rice, he decided that that would be the food that would lead to his enlightenment. So he took that in. Okay, and then after that, he made the vow to be enlightened. Okay, so that was the story in this particular sutra. So the thing in this sutra that was given to him was the rice milk. Okay, so today we, every time when we come to the 8th of the 12th lunar month, we will eat the laba congee. We will cook the laba congee. And we don't only commemorate the Buddha's enlightenment, but we also do that as part of charity and social welfare. And so we would eat the porridge, and we would also distribute them to many different people, and to tell and share with them the importance of the Buddha's enlightenment. Okay, so eating lapa congee is not only a practice where we commemorate the Buddha's enlightenment, it is also a way where we do social welfare and charity work today. Okay. Right. So I'd like to ask you a question. Is there any local Buddhist dishes? I know Di Sui Fang prepared prawn noodles today. Okay. 3 days ago, I came to Kuala Lumpur, and they took me to this Thai vegetarian restaurant, and I ordered lo han zai. And it was very delicious. It was done in the Thai way. It's probably a local adaptation of lo han zai. And anybody knows why it's called lo han zai? Okay, this particular dish is actually a stew of 18 different ingredients. Okay, and the 18 represents 18 arahats. Okay, and 18 arahats is actually a feature of Chinese Buddhism. Okay, and so this particular dish was called lo han zai. And there was a time in China when they wanted to give a feast to a group of monks, and they didn't know what to cook. And so they came out with this dish whereby they put 18 different ingredients and they offer it to the monks. And so that's why, and then this dish became popular, and over time it's called lo han zai. Right. Okay, next I want to talk about clothing. So during the Buddha's time, the Buddha says that the robe that the monastics wear should be sewed together from discarded pieces of cloth, right? And in Chinese we call fen sao yi. That means it's cloth that nobody wants, okay? And the Buddha also said that there are 10 kinds of rags that you can use for fen sao yi, for this monastic robe. It's chewed on by ox, or is gnawed by rats, scorched by fire, soiled by menstruation, soiled by childbirth, offered at a shrine, left at a graveyard, offered in a petitional prayer, discarded by a king's officers, or brought back from a funeral. Okay, so you can see from this list, this is cloth that nobody wants, is discarded. All right? And during that time, the monks are not supposed to wear anything that's fanciful. Okay, they're not supposed to wear anything that's nice. And that's why the Buddha came out with this rule. But at the same time, there are also devotees who want to make offering of robe to the monks. Okay? But because the Buddha has set this rule, so what the devotees do is they will place the robe on the street where the monks would walk by when they go for their alms procession, for the monks to pick them up. Okay, because if they throw it on the streets, that means it's discarded. And then the monks can then pick them up. Okay, so it's quite different from today. Some devotees, when they, it's not like, 师父我想要供养你一块布. It's not like that. At that time, because the Buddha set this rule, the devotees throw it on the streets for the monks. And then the Buddha also set a rule that the kasaya should be dyed in a bad color, or in Chinese we say 坏色. Okay, that means it shouldn't be an attractive color, and it should not be a fancy color. It should be a dull and bad color. Okay, and the Buddha says that the robes should be dyed in 6 different kinds of. You can use the roots, or you can use the stems, the bark, the leaves, the flowers, or the fruits to dye the robe. Okay, so this dye came from natural resources, right? And then the Buddha also set the rule that you can only have 3 pieces of cloth, 3 pieces of ropes. And in the Vinaya, it was recorded that on one cold winter night, the Buddha sat in the open air with 1 rope, and then he didn't feel it was cold. And then at the first watch of the night, when it was ending, he began to feel cold, and he put on a 2nd rope. Okay, and then later on into deep into the night again, he feel cold again, and then he put on a 3rd rope, and then he passed through the night, and then he thinks, he decided that would be enough for the monastics, and so he set this rule that all monastics are allowed to have only three ropes. Okay, and these 3 ropes is one is the outer rope, one is the upper rope, and one is the inner rope. Okay. And the Buddha also said that these 3 ropes that a monastic have, they have to carry all the time. Okay, wherever they go. Okay, and why is that? Because once a monk went to seek for alms, he wore his upper robe and his inner robe, and he left his outer robe. So when he seek for alms and when he came back, his robe was stolen. The outer robe was stolen. So the Buddha set the rule, you have to carry 3 robes all the time. Okay. So in Chinese we say 三衣不离身. That means you have to carry all the time. And also if you look at the scriptures, we always say, for example, 舍利弗既从坐起，偏袒右肩, right? 合掌向佛做誓言, etc., etc. And so, 偏袒右肩, that means to bear the right shoulder. Okay, and we have to wear the robes bearing the right shoulder. Okay, and why is that? Bearing the right shoulder is actually not a Buddhist practice. It was an Indian tradition. And Buddhism adopted that practice. And it actually means to be of service, okay? And to listen to instructions and to pay respect, okay? So in the sutra, if you look closely, for example, Sariputra, 舍利弗既从坐起，偏袒右肩. That means Sariputra got up from his seat and then he bares his right shoulder. Okay? That means when he's prostrating to the Buddha, then he bares his right shoulder. Okay? He doesn't have to bear it all the time. Okay? So in some of the Tibetan, for example, some of the talks given by a Tibetan Lama, usually they will prostrate to the Buddha statue before they got on to their seat. And you will notice that they don't actually have the robe, they don't actually bear the right shoulder all the time. They wear it across both shoulders, and when they make their prostrations, then they will put it across their left shoulder and they will bear the right shoulder. And then they will make the 3 prostrations, and then after that they will cover both shoulders again and go on to their seat and start the talk. Okay, so Pinhan Yujian is that you have that gesture of paying respect. Right? Okay, so there are 3 robes. This is the inner robe, and it covers the lower body. It's called Antavasa, and it's made from 5 stripes of cloth. And this is used for most of the chores that a monk would do. Okay, and then we have the Uttarasanga, which is called the upper robe, and it has 7 stripes in the Chinese robe, and it's worn when eating, prostrating, or listening to Dharma talks. Okay. And then we have this Sangati, which is the outer robe. And the outer robe is worn, is made from 2 layers of cloth, and is to keep warm. And it can be used as a bedding or sitting mat, and it's worn when going out of the temple, okay, during the Buddha's time. And also, the Kasaya was designed by the Buddha to have patch feel, like patch-like feel like patches. Okay, that's because the Buddha, once he went out and he saw the field of Magadha, and he saw that it was laid out in strips and lines, and the fields actually represent fields of merit. Okay, so the robe that the monastics wear actually symbolize fields of merit. Okay, so when you make an offering to the monastic, you're actually planting a seed in your field of merit. Okay, so that's what it symbolizes. Okay, and then when Buddhism came into China, then the Buddhist robe has to be localized. Okay, for some reasons. One is that China has a colder climate than India. Okay, so it's not practical to wear what the Indian monastics were wearing. And then it's also improper for the Chinese to bare their body. Okay, so Chinese are more conservative. And then the temples, they have been to be self-sufficient. So that means they have to do their own farming, and they have to do their own, they grow their own crops for their own food. Okay, so to wear the Antavasa is actually not very practical. Okay, so to wear the 5-stripe robe is actually not very practical. Okay, so in Chinese Buddhism, the robe was adapted into something more practical. Okay, so this is the 7-stripe robe, and then this is the 9-stripe robe. Okay, the 7-stripe robe is actually the Uttarasanga. This is worn when we go for Dharma services, usual daily Dharma services. And then this is the 9-stripe robe, and it's worn for more important occasions. And during the ordination, we are actually given 3 robes, the 5, the 7, and the 9-stripe. But we don't actually wear the 5-stripe robe, okay? Because it's not practical. The 5-stripe robe is supposed to be something that we wear for everyday use. And so if we have to wear the 5-stripe robe, it's not a practical attire. Okay, so although we receive it during the ordination, we don't actually wear it. Okay, and then this is a even more elaborated form of the robe. the 25 stripe Hong Zu Yi, the red robe. Okay, and this is worn by eminent monks or the master of ceremony during a Dharma ritual. They would wear this Hong Zu Yi. Okay, so the 3 robes that the Buddha said was actually converted into the 5, 7, and 9 robes. Okay, and then, but we also have 25. So from 5 to 25, there are actually 9 different levels. Okay, and there are 9 levels in between. So the 9 levels actually represents 九品上身. Okay, and so the 5 stripe represents 下品下身, and the 25 stripe represents 上品上身. And in between you have 9 different levels. Okay, this is a Chinese invention, Chinese creation. Another Chinese creation is the Chanshan, which you see monastics wearing. This is something like the Antavasa. Okay, like I said earlier, the 5 stripe robe is not practical for everyday use. Okay, so the Chinese came up with what they call Chanshan. And Chanshan is actually transformed from Tang Dynasty costume. Okay, so what you see us wearing this one, this is actually Tang Dynasty costume. It's the oldest fashion so far you see. And on the collar, you have lines on the collar. And because on the Chanshan, we don't have these stripes, okay, that represents the fields of merit. So they were actually here on the collar. So you have these lines, they actually represent the fields of merit. Okay, and then another invention is the haiqing. Okay, so you know the Chinese, they don't bear the right shoulder, right? So if they want to wear the robe across the left shoulder, then they have to wear something inside before wearing the robe. And so they came up with this haiqing. And the haiqing is actually adapted from the imperial robe. Okay, it's what the imperial princess would wear. And the haiqing is very broad and very comfortable. And the word haiqing actually have 2 connotations. The word hai. Hai means it's very broad. That means it's all embracing. You're able to embrace everything. Okay, and qing means 青出于蓝. Okay, that means you surpass your forefathers. You improve generation to generation. Okay, so the 2 words means haiqing. That means it's all embracing, and you can improve, you know, with every new generation. And if you notice, there are 2 colors in the haiqing. One is the black one. The black one is worn by both the monastic and the lay. And then we have the yellow one. The yellow one is usually worn by the abbot or the master of ceremony, right? And of course, we have some other monastic clothing like the duan gua and the zong gua and etc. And these are all Chinese creations. And so we've seen what the monastic wear, the robe. And what about the lay people? The lay people wear what you call man yi, right? And it's actually originated from this word pata. And it's worn by the novice. And then it was extended to include the lay people. Okay, and the man yi we also call li can yi. That means a robe you wear for repentance. And according to the text, you're not supposed, you're only allowed to wear this during the Dharma services. If you do go to the market, you're not allowed to wear to the supermarket, NTUC, etc. Yeah. Okay, so, and we've seen, you know, what Chinese monastics wear. And what about Singaporean monastics? In Singapore, it's very special, I think, also in Malaysia, because we have so many different traditions in Singapore. So we wear whatever tradition we follow. Okay, so it's you have the Chinese tradition, and then you have the Tibetan tradition, and then you have the Theravada tradition. Okay, so, and my question is it possible for Singapore to have its own monastic robe, to come up with its own Singaporean flavored robe. The red and white one. Okay. Right. I think it's something that we can all think about. And we can take the reference from what the Chinese have done. But I guess it's a bit difficult because, first of all, Singapore is a multiracial, multi-religious place. So, unlike China, where they only have like one dominant race, the Chinese. And you need to have imperial support. You need to have support from the government to enforce a rule like this. And for the clothing to be localized in China, it actually took a few dynasties. Okay, so we know from the time when Buddhism entered China in year 64 until the time of Tang Dynasty, right? This is Tang Dynasty costume, right? And Tang Dynasty is about 618 to 907, so 7th to 10th century. So it took about, like, on the average, I think, 600 years to 1,000 years, right? For Chinese Buddhism to come up with its own monastic robe. Okay, so it has that length of time. It needs that length of time. Okay, so I think there's many factors that we need to consider. Okay, right. So, actually, as I was looking into this chapter, I have this question about localization. You know, do you think Singapore is able to develop its own style of Buddhism? Why and why not? Okay, I think this is a question that we can all think about, but I think there's a lot of factors that affect localization, and Buddhism has to be relevant to Singaporeans. Okay, so you need to have people who can actually make very wise decision on how this would affect Buddhism in the future. Okay. I have about 15 minutes. I still have a lot to say. All right, housing. Next on housing. During the Buddha's time, there are two main monasteries. One is the Bamboo Grove, and the other one is Jetavana Vihara. Okay, this is how Bamboo Grove look like. Now there are still bamboo shoots, but the whole place is already in ruins. And this place has two origins in the sutra. One is that it was donated by King Bimbasara, and the other one was that it was donated by Kalandaka, a wealthy elder. And in the sutra on past and present causes and effects, this place was said to have 16 courts, each containing 60 chambers, 500 buildings, and 72 halls as teaching spaces for the Buddha. Okay, so you can tell it's a really huge place. The other vihara is Jetavana Vihara. Okay, this is how it looks like now. And this place was donated by Anatta Pindada, and it was brought from Prince Jata. Okay, and that's why we call it Jetavana. And Sariputra was the architect of this place. And this place was also a huge place. It's approximately 80 hectares. If you've been to Fo Guang Shan Buddha Museum, Fo Guang Shan Buddha Museum is about 50 hectares. So this is even bigger than the Buddha Museum. Okay, and it's also fully equipped with many of these facilities. Okay, and what does it mean by the word vihara? Vihara is actually a Sanskrit and Pali term. It means a Buddhist monastery, and it is a secluded place in which monks can walk in. Okay, so they are near to the settlements to allow the monks to be able to go and seek for alms, but it has to be secluded enough not to disturb the meditation. Okay. So vihara is defined as a residence for the monks. It's also a center for religious work and meditation, and it's a center for Buddhist learning. And according to some references, they say that there are actually 5 kinds of dwellings that were suitable for monks to live in, but only the vihara and the guha is the cave, have survived. Okay, and this is the very first temple in China, right? And when the 2 monks came from the Western region or Central Asia to China, this place was actually an imperial guest house. It's not really a religious place. It's an imperial guest house. It's for hosting foreign guests. Okay. So the word Si, okay, this place was formerly known as Honglu Si, and Si was actually a character to mean ministry, okay, government ministry, and then the emperor ordered that the word Si was to be added to the name of a temple, okay, and later times even the mosque came to use this word, like Qingzhen Si, to mean a religious place. And then it was dropped off from the name of government ministries. Okay? So the word Si actually means a government ministry. Okay, then over time it became to mean a temple. Okay, and because the 2 monks traveled on a white horse, that's why it's called Bai Ma Si. But the original name was Honglu Si at that time. Okay, and if you look at the Bai Ma Si, it looks very much like an imperial palace, right? And so that was the style that was adapted on Chinese temples, right? You have palace-like style. Okay, and you know, this is a very typical Chinese temple. It's palace-like, and then it has 2 stories. And I've read somewhere that the 2 stories represent ultimate and relative truth. Okay? So from the outside, you see 2 stories. But when you go into the temple, it only has 1 story. Okay? So there is only one truth. Right? And also you can see these bracket sets. They are also a part of Chinese temple architecture. Okay, and in Chinese, we call a temple a siyuan, right? And siyuan can mean a vihara. Vihara is a dwelling place for the monks to walk in, a secluded place for the monks to walk in. And another meaning is Sangharama. Okay, Sangha means the Sangha community, the monastic community. Rama means a garden. Okay, so it's a garden for the monastic community. And over time, the Sangharama is developed to have into a monastic complex with 7 halls. 7 is a number to mean complete. Okay, so a monastic complex with 7 halls, that is an ideal Buddhist setting. Okay, so what are the 7 halls? The first one is the stupa or the pagoda to put the relics of the Buddha. The second one is the golden hall or the main hall to put the Buddha statue, the Buddha image. And these 2 halls are supposed to be in the center of the complex. And then we have other halls like the lecture hall, the bell tower, the sutra repository, the monastic quarters, and the dining hall. Okay, and these few halls are to be built around the stupa and the golden hall. Okay. Okay, and I try to find a temple in China that is that satisfy that criteria, but I couldn't find a classic example. But I found classic examples in Japan. So this is one of the temple. This is Shitennoji Temple in Osaka, Japan. Shitennoji means the 4 heavenly kings. Okay, and if you see, this is the pagoda. Behind the pagoda is the Golden Hall. Okay, and then the other structures are built around these 2 structures. Okay, so this is a very ideal classic example of a Sangharama. And this is the layout of the temple. So you have the pagoda here, you have the Golden Hall here, and then you have a covered walkway around these 2 structures, and then you have the entrance, the middle gate, and then you have several other halls. Okay, and this was the setting for a Sangharama. Of course, today, if you look in temples in China, you couldn't really find something like this. But we do have the covered walkway, right? So if you go to Foguanshan, Daxiongbaodian, right? This would be Huazhan Xuanmen. Then you have the covered walkway that leads to Daxiongbaodian. Okay, something like this. Okay, and the role of a monastery in China, it has the role of a vihara, and but it also has added roles that it is used to help to resolve the problems of the Chinese people. And for the temples to exist in China, it has to play a role in the society. Okay, it cannot be there just simply for their own practice. It has to be relevant to the Chinese people. Okay, so one of the roles that they have to play is they have to resolve the people's daily problems. Okay, they have to help with the problems in the Chinese community. And so that is also holding true to the original intents of the Buddha. Okay, so the Buddha's teaching was taught to help to resolve the problems of sentient beings. Okay, and so the role of the monastery, it has grown also and developed over time to play its role as a vihara and also in social work and charity work. Okay, so for a Chinese monastery in the society, they actually have added roles. Like, for example, it is a free school. Okay, it serves as a free school. And they turn the wasteland into farmlands, okay, because they have to be self-sustained. They have to go their own agriculture. Okay, so these monasteries were turned into farmlands, etc. And also like they were used as emergency relief. When there is an emergency, people go to the monastery to seek for refuge. Okay, so it's also used in this manner. Okay, so in Chinese Buddhism, they were not used mainly for religious purpose. They were also used for social and also to provide relief aids. So during that time, the monks also allow people to pawn money and material possessions for no interest. So the people can actually borrow money from the monks, and they are allowed to repay the money at their own time, for example. Okay, so what are some of the local relief aids that you have in Singapore, Foguanshan, to make this place relevant to the Singaporeans? Bursary, right? You have the bursary. You have 慈爱, childcare, right? Any more? Okay, this is a picture I took at Malaysia Wenjiao Zhongxin in KL. They have a clinic, for example. They have a clinic at the Wenjiao Zhongxin So people can go there not only for religious purpose, they can also get medical support from the temple. Yes. And I also want to congratulate Singapore Fo Guang Shan for receiving this very important award. Community Spirit Awards, which means that you have Singapore, Fo Guang Shan has actually made this place relevant to the Singaporean community in Singapore. And I heard that Singapore Fo Guang Shan is the only Buddhist organization to receive this award. So I like to congratulate you for all the good work that you have done. Okay. Okay, and then in the book, Venerable Master also talk about how monasteries in China today, they are listed only as a tourist attraction and a commercial venture, and they have admission fees. So it's really a pity that Chinese temples have become a tourist attraction, or else, they would have been able to maintain that kind of architecture and the spirit of a temple, how it should function as a temple. Okay. Okay, so what should a local temple look like? Right, so we have seen many of these Chinese temples. So what should a Singaporean temple look like? Modern. Like Singapore Fo Guang Shan. Right. And it doesn't have to look like a temple, you mean? Doesn't have to look like a traditional temple. Wow, okay. That was the answer I was looking for. Okay, so this is Fo Guang Shan Wenjiao Zhongxing in KL. So if you look at this building, if there is no Fo Guang Wenjiao Zhongxing on the building, it will look like just like any other buildings in the neighborhood. Okay, so I think it has localized. Okay, because it blends into the neighborhood. This is Xingma Si, and I gave this talk yesterday at Xingma Si, and I asked them, what should a Malaysian temple look like? They told me it should look like Xingma Si. And so Xingma Si, it looks very much like a school, right? And I think this also resonates with Venerable Master's idea that a temple should be a school. It should be a place of education. Okay. And Fo Guang Shan, from the outside, it looks like HDB. Yeah. Looks like polyclinic. Okay, so I think this, the temples in Singapore and Malaysia have localized very successfully. Okay, because it is relevant to the people here. It doesn't stand out to be like it blends into the neighborhood, and also you have played a very important role in the community through your social work. So I think its localization has been pretty successful. Maybe if we have the red and white monastic robe, it would be even more special, maybe. Okay, but if you look at Donzen Temple, Dongchan Si, in Malaysia, Jenjarong, it retains a look of a Chinese traditional temple. And I think it's because Dongchan Si is the main branch in this Singapore-Malaysian area. Okay, and so as the main branch, it has to symbolize the heritage of Humanistic Buddhism. And Humanistic Buddhism is based on Chinese Buddhism. Okay, so it has the outlook of a traditional Chinese temple. Okay, but the functions have slightly deviated from a Sangharama. Okay, it doesn't have the 7 halls like we see in a traditional Sangharama. but it has the halls that is relevant to modern people. So you have the 美术馆, the art gallery, you have the Buddhist college, you have 超经坛 Sutra repository that we also have over here, right? So the roles have slightly changed, okay? But I think it carries the spirit of a traditional temple and how it looks like on the outside. And it has that symbol of heritage. Okay. Right, I guess I don't have time for Buddhist arts anymore. So I think I'll end my talk here. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask.